Last week, we were here in church doing our formal First Communion photos. How many of you remember doing that? Any of you? I was here. We looked pretty good. But after that evening, it occurred to me that I thought I had my First Communion photo that my sister found for me some years ago from 1964. Imagine how long ago that is. And I found it. And I was reminded of something that happened. I made my First Communion at St. Andrew Church in Milford, which in those days had recessed lighting. That means it's way up in the ceiling, and the church was very dark. And we had our First Communion in the morning, as you are. And then we walked out of the church and were told by Sister Mary William, our principal, to line up on the steps in front. What she hadn't counted on was that the church faces east and the sun was right in our faces. And so I have a 59-year-old reminder that we were all in absolute pain from the sun hitting our eyes. Everyone is squinting or grimacing or trying to hide behind their hands, and you can't figure out who anyone is. Last night I was trying to say, oh, that's me. And then I realized, no, that's Bob Reynolds. I can't even tell who I am in this because I didn't write down the names at the time. It's not a bad reminder, actually. It occurred to me that having the sun in our eyes, having that initial pain and grimacing and squinting at the world was not the worst thing in the world that could have happened, because the world sometimes is difficult. Server, thank you. And what happens here today for our second graders helps us face the painful things in the world. Sometimes we don't want to look at what's going on. Sometimes it makes us angry. Sometimes it disgusts us. Sometimes it hurts us. But here we are today, receiving the Eucharist, First Communion, which will give us strength, which gives us Jesus. And in the gospel today, Jesus says, do not let your hearts be troubled. Basically, he's saying, don't ever be afraid. And he's saying, have faith in me. Jesus gives us himself in this communion, in the Eucharist, so that we can leave this church with all these wonderful people who love you very much, and we go out into the world and we live out what we have received. That means we've received Jesus, so we share him with one another, and we do so without being afraid. God is with us, giving us his son, Jesus, and we can go out and help people see him a little better. Today, then, let's thank God for that gift, the gift that allows us to be strong and to realize that God loves us so very much and that we are important to him. Our lives matter to God very, very much. And Jesus says, I love you so much, I'm going to share myself with you. And this time, for the very first time for some of you, in your First Communion. So we thank God for that gift. And if every now and then the world is difficult and we want to close our eyes to it or grimace or be upset or put up our hands, let's remember, Jesus is with us and he calls us children of light. And that who is the light of the world? Jesus. We never have to be afraid.